Welcome to the Social Work Rants podcast, providing a platform for social workers to share their stories. The podcast covers a wide range of topics, including mental health, social justice, policy, and the day-to-day realities of the profession. This season, season 9, we'll be focusing on the mental and emotional aspects of money for people of color. Hope you enjoy. Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another episode of the Social Work Rants podcast. I'm your host, Bass Moreno. Saludos a todos. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. I appreciate all the love and support. Gracias a todos por su apoyo. Continue to follow the podcast on different social media outlets on Instagram at the Social Work Rants podcast. That is all one word. On Twitter, X at Social Work Rants, and on Facebook, aka Meta, type in the Social Work Rants podcast, hit that like button, and of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, type in the Social Work Rants podcast, hit that red subscribe button. Shout out to everybody that's been listening and following and just grinding out these episodes, getting close to episode 200. So, my guest at this time, Ken Peebles. We had the pleasure interacting. The power of LinkedIn. If you're not using LinkedIn to your advantage, you are missing out on potential networking, potential partnerships, and all that good stuff. And I spent a few episodes talking about the power of networking, especially for social workers. We got to do it because we're not going to be wealthy doing social work.
That's right.
That's not happening. Not just social work anyway.
Right. That's right.
So Ken Peoples, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, Baz. It's good to be on the podcast. It's good to interact with you in real time, for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we're able to connect and chop it up real quick. So for people who don't know who you are, let me just tell people about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Ken. I'm from Philly. I grew up here in the city. Spent a little bit of time abroad, but mostly based here in Philadelphia. I'm a social worker. I mostly work in the I guess you call it the forensic space, I guess you could say, justice involved youth, that sort of thing. I'm also a certified financial social worker. So I work in the financial independence and financial social work space. And got a small practice and I don't know what to say, Bass. I'm really bad at intros, I'll tell you that. Or describing myself.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a whole lot. You got a small practice, you're a certified social worker, right here, a regular social worker, and you out in Philly. So that's a whole lot right there.
Yeah. Okay, we can start with that.
Well, let's talk about Philly a little bit. I know they have a recently. She's been there for a year already. It's been a full year since Ms. Parker been elected.
I'm not
Or she
sure.
started.
Maybe
Or she started
coming up
20.
on a year.
Oh,
Yeah,
she
I think
started
coming
this
up on
year.
a year. Yeah, I think coming up on a year. Yeah,
So,
I believe
so,
so.
so Ms. Sherelle Parker is the new mayor of Philadelphia, and
Mhm.
is already making her mark in the city, for good or bad. We touch on politics a little bit, but we're trying to get all up
Yeah, no, and that's all
in
good.
the
I'm
politics.
fine with that. So
But
that we don't know how, well, it's been a year, so jury's still out. We don't know. You know, no evaluation yet, no judgment so far. Just I'm not super, Philly politics is kind of tricky, so to speak. Um, but yeah,
in what way you
I don't know
feel?
what else. Uh, I don't know. It's like I feel like local politics is the only place where like a lot of where ordinary people have any power left. You know what I mean? So I try to get involved a lot in like, city council on that city sort of thing. But a lot of Philly politics, in my opinion, seems to be controlled. Like there's like so much, there's vying for control of the city, but a lot of that comes from outside of the city, a lot of that influence. So it's kind of weird. It's hard to put your fingers on. And I'm actually learning more now that I'm paying attention to it more now because I've become more interested in like local politics more. But I'm still figuring things out, you know what I mean?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'm more of a foreign policy, more macro view when it comes to this sort of thing. You know what I mean? Or foreign
Uh,
policy, national policy sort of thing. But I'm definitely getting more interested in local politics though, because like I said, I think that's the only place where we actually have some power left as ordinary working class people.
Right. So for purposes of the viewers and listeners, Philly this year. Now, obviously, anybody who's listened to the podcast know I'm a sports junkie. So, recently in Philly, and I talk about Philly because I'm like an hour from Philly, driving. So, there's been some controversy of a brand new arena in the Chinatown section. Well, they want to build a brand new arena for the basketball team, the Philadelphia 76ers, in downtown Chinatown. And of course, the residents of Chinatown is saying, hell no, don't build it here. And of course, there's uh, transportation issues, parking, all that good stuff that comes with building a brand new arena and all that stuff. And there's already slowly but fast in a way gentrification that's been happening. I mean, it's happening throughout. Welcome to the United States of America, future home of gentrification throughout most major cities. Um, well, all that to say, like what's happening, like boots on the ground regarding that, and just in general where it relates to social work.
Yeah, so so obviously if you're going to move the Sixers up, downtown, there's going to be massive community impact, man. I mean, we're talking in both ways, you know what I mean? But it's going to disrupt a lot of activity in the area. So like and you mentioned gentrification and like the concerns around it, like and displacement, things like cultural preservation. And I say that because where they're planning to move the arena um will directly impact the Chinatown community. Um so it's a long standing residential and small business area in the city, and they are the ones sort of like taking the lead in opposing it from what I've seen on the ground. Um, but the city and the businesses are thinking, they're playing up the economic benefits, things like job creation, tourism, uh, so they're stressing those things. In terms of like social workers and like if I was to make some sort of like how could how does this intersect with us, I guess maybe we could advocate for a transparent, inclusive decision making process between the two to some sort of reconcile the two sides, you know just to ensure like there's some sort of accountability to the community in some sort of way. That's in my personal work, that's always my priority. um but in my personal opinion, uh I actually like I don't understand why they want to. I mean, I understand why they want to bring it downtown, but it's just traffic wise, it makes absolutely no sense to do it. Um, and it makes sense. I mean, public transportation wise is fine, but it's fine in terms of public transportation down in South Philly. And I like the idea of everybody, with all the stadiums, 3 stadiums for 4 teams being all
Mm-hmm.
in one centralized area in South Philly. And I think that's fine. Um, I don't see the need to move the Sixers, well, and by extension, the Flyers all the way, unless the Flyers are going to stay on South Philly. I don't know. I don't see why they would.
Well, that
I,
well,
I don't. I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I saw something online that said that the Sixers rent the arena, so I guess the Flyers would stay there and just the Sixers would go. I don't know how true that is. I mean, I'm not
Hmm.
a Sixers
Okay.
fan or anything, But I get that. I guess that's the reason why they want to build a brand new arena just for them.
I mean, I don't understand I mean, hockey and basketball have been coexisting in the same arena for a long time now. And it's like some arenas, football does it, like up in New York where you're at, you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah,
I don't, I don't see, I don't see the utility, you know? Um, but I'm happy to listen to some opinions. And honestly, I haven't looked into it as much as and I'm not like I'm not like a authority on this in terms of like having done my research and looked into this like extensively, but just having passively um heard about it and did some light reading on it and then having my own opinion. This is just what this is where I'm at on this situation right now. Yeah. Do you
I
have an
got you.
opinion? What do you think? I mean, as an outsider, somebody not from Philly.
Can they win a championship first before they move?
Ah, woo, shade. Woo. All right. So, and and I second that. And I'll put this on record. So I'm the only person in Philly. Well, not the only person in Philly, but so I like Philly sports. I'm from Philly. This is my city. However, I'm an Eagles fan, Flyers fan, Eagles and Flyers by default. But I do consider myself an Eagles fan. Definitely a Phillies fan. Um, but I'm not a Sixers fan. I root for them as long as they're not playing my team, which is the Indiana Pacers. So, so I know you
Okay.
probably got an even bigger hate for me now. Being I don't know. Assuming you're a Knicks fan, I'm not sure. Are you?
I'm not an Knicks fan.
Okay, good. All right, cool. I'm not kicked off the podcast now.
Oh, so how is it like what do you do with your because I get questions at least recent ever since I got my certification in financial social work, like how are you using that, if at all?
So, you know, I I feel like it definitely gives me a certification to like some backing to like okay, even though I'm a social worker, I do have some sort of like some sort of credential and some sort of knowledge about this situation. You know what I mean? And I think it's a very unique credential. It's a very fresh lane in social work.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I think I liken it as being just like sort of like a psychoeducation in a way. You know what I mean? As a way, another way of empowering individuals, clients, but this time in financial literacy, in financial education, financial tools, you know and emphasizing like specifically like the intersection between finances and mental health. I think that's like the that unique angle that financial social work uh gives, that it's that unique lane. And you know you kind of package that and that's your your framework for unite for discussing like things like financial stress and like and how it's exacerbated by like things like anxiety,
Hmm.
depression, family tensions. That's a big one because we deal with those situations a lot, especially like sandwich generation folks. um right. And it's like
Absolutely.
a very holistic approach to this sort of thing, you know what I mean? So it addresses like clients' financial skills and gets them where you need them to be. And then also the underlying like emotional, behavioral things that are tied to money, you know what I mean? And help them, develop healthier financial habits. And I think once you get people to that, that healthy state where to where they're, financially healthy, you know what I mean? Then you can start moving into other avenues such as like, investing. What can you
Hmm.
do with excess money now? You know what I mean? And then that's when
Right.
things start to really take off. Yeah.
No, yeah, especially where in the US, like 50% of marriages end in divorce, and number one reason is finances. So people don't like to talk about money, or uh, money's still taboo subject uh, within America, or especially in our Black and Brown communities. We don't talk about that. With people die all the time, so the death is expensive. So you know, kind of, when people say, especially these rappers say, money make the world go around. Sometimes that's actually
Mhm.
true because you need money to do different things. And now the way our election cycles played out, definitely going to be hearing a lot more about this money and different aspects of money, crypto, and all these different things are happening. So we need to tap in and learn about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like this gives us that credential in as a means to like to talk about these things with the community. Like I said, and I'm going to speak to specifically one of the points that you made, but how I came across financial social work, like I said, I didn't even know it was a thing. And I feel like I repeated this story like twice already, but I'll say it again. Um I was it was during the shutdown pandemic 2020, and I had I was on LinkedIn Learning, and I was watching a lady just talk about like the basics and like investing and some certain things about the stock market and stuff like that. It's very 101 type of training,
Hmm.
but I just wanted to hear about it. And I noticed like her credentials, she was just like an LCSW. And I'm just like, how are you, you know, not and no shade, you know what I mean? I didn't know I didn't know at the time, but she's like, MSW, LCSW. I'm like, what are you doing teaching sitting here having a LinkedIn learning about? I would expect the MBA, somebody in finance or something like that. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? And so I go to her profile and then I see a certification for financial social work. I'm like, what is this? So then I go in and I look and I'm just like, wow, I was just blown away. And
Hmm.
that's when I found out about the Center for Financial Social Work, and University of Maryland College Park has a program as well. And that was the one I was going to go to, but they were shut down during they weren't accepting. I think they were shut down temporarily during the pandemic in 2000. So 2020, said 2000. But yeah, but to speak to one of the other things you said, but anyways, that's what like got me into this trajectory. Like, wow, I don't have to leave social work or get an MBA in order to do something in this space. And it's such a new and fresh niche, and it's so untapped. I think there's like so much to do,
Hmm.
here. You know what I mean? And so I'm really, really excited about it. And to speak to one of the things you talked about in terms of like money taboos, it's like and you talked about specifically like death. And so I think death and dying is one of the biggest taboos in terms of like what we do with assets when somebody transitions. And like
Hmm.
one of the un one of the un one of the things another thing that we should talk about as black and brown people is that a lot of times there's a lot of beef when like somebody passes away and then there are assets there and then there was no plan, and then it's like people got to cooperate, and then it becomes a whole mess, you know what I mean?
Right.
So one thing that's my mission, Baz, what my mission is to stop people in our communities from having to go to probate, and
Hmm.
hiring these probate lawyers, because I mean they love our community because we give them all the business, you know what I'm saying? And then we can't get it together on top of that, you know what I mean? So that's where the financial education piece comes in, and then that's where the estate planning piece comes in, which I consider also to be part of the psychoeducation process. You know what I mean? It doesn't just
Like.
start it doesn't just stop at budgeting and like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's an ongoing, it's a continuum, you know what I mean? I feel like until you get to financial independence, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's how I frame it for the people that I work with. But you know what I mean? It's just like, but as I was saying, like estate planning is essential in our communities. And like, because we lose so much wealth in our
Hmm.
communities because we already don't have like the best allies in terms of the federal government and things like that when it comes to like loan access and like things like that. So there's a lot of malfeasance that goes on, especially when it comes to real estate and things like that. So like we can't work against ourselves as well, you know what I mean? So
Right.
best practices and education, I think, is the way to go for the community. Yeah.
Right. Especially like somebody dies or whatever, they're like, okay, I guess let's. I guess it kind of goes back to like gentrification in a way. Is like you have property, you, instead of keeping it within the family, you sell it because you need the money because person doesn't have life insurance. So now you need the money to pay for the death or whatever, and then you sell it, and then somebody brand new moves in, they fix it up in the house, and that's sometimes that's how I will like gentrification kind of starts, like one house at a time, and then or real estate investors, they come in and they just buy up the property, and they're there's different loans to fix houses how they want it and whatever, like 2OK loan, 203K loans and things like that, and then you realize like you're losing the sense of how the community how it is, and then you seeing folks coming in, or they use it for Airbnb, if just a whole lot of variety of different things. So we got to keep the money within our own community. So it starts with that education, kind of like all the way through, even just the life insurance, and just how cheap it actually is. And I know people struggling day to day to for groceries and things like that. So you don't really be thinking about buying a life insurance policy, but it's not, the cheaper you get it, the earlier you get it, the cheaper it is. So it's
Right.
it's not relatively inexpensive. And like I said, and I, of course, as I say that, I think about like, yes, like, so a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck, and like literally got every dollar going into something that they need for their household. But it is something to think about, and at least have those type of conversations.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So like, you know, there's so much you said that I want to I want to respond to, but I think in terms of like I think life insurance is another area where, you know, we're talking about like, you know, the estate planning process, you know what I'm saying? In addition to, you know, not going to probate, but what does that mean? That means if you own property, you know, I advocate for a revocable living trust. I love those things. I think they're awesome. Um, and I also, advocate, like you said, like, keeping things in the family. There's one workshop or a teaching um or presentation that I like to do. And it's called Do Not Sell Grandma's House, right? And it's basically like strategies and tips on reconciliation for because families go through so much, and like I said, it ties back to what I was saying previously in terms of like estate planning not being even thought about until somebody passes away. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
we treat it in our communities as an acute issue. You know what I mean? We don't plan for it until it happens. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
then once it happens, everybody's like, panicking. What do we do? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then emotions get involved because somebody just passed away. So already, people are have heightened emotions. Decisions get made. Some people want to put money up, some people don't. You know what I mean? People aren't on the same page. They end up having to sell. And it's just like that's another way that people get easy access to properties in our community. And like, it's so there's a lot to do. So do not sell grandma's house. I love doing that presentation in the community, but also I use it to supplement a project that we have. It's called Project Equity, and it ties into exactly what we're talking about now. It's about preventing home closures and uh sustaining home ownership, right? So, in Philly, we, because so much gentrification is happening, we're having an issue with like people's property taxes are going way, way up because their property values are going up. You know what I mean? So that's a
Mm-hmm.
good thing, but the taxes are going up too. And the issue is that, we have a lot of elderly folks who are on fixed incomes and like, they are very sensitive to these increases. You know what I mean? Even though they're
Mm-hmm.
their properties, their property value is going up, but they're not looking to tap into that equity. You know what I mean? And some of them still have mortgages. Some might have their property already paid off, but that's still so much for them. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of folks are losing their homes because of things like this. And what we try to do is, and thankfully we in the city, through city council, and these were in place for a while now. We have really good city councilors that did a lot around this sort of thing. In terms of like housing sustainability and keeping people in homes. So there are a lot of programs here in terms of like helping people with their property taxes, mitigating them. Also programs to help people get their taxes deferred and things like that. So we have a bunch of different programs that we can get people on based on their specific. It's not just two. I just mentioned two, but there are several that we can get people connected with because it's mostly non-white folks who are disproportionately losing their homes because of unpaid property taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and also minority communities face the highest, rates of predatory lending and and they're the most financially vulnerable, right? And that's actually why I started this work, Baz. I actually did housing counseling right out of undergrad. Um, Back in the day, gosh, I think it was like, oh man, it was 2008, 2000, 2008 through 2010, I believe. So like, oh, it was a long time ago. And you know, I saw this was like 2007, 2008. So you remember it was like the housing crisis at that time
Mm-hmm.
where
Right.
um and at the time I didn't realize what I was seeing, but now in retrospect, I understand. I was like, wow, I actually saw this happen. So there are two clients I remember. One was a guy working like temple maintenance up in the northeast Philly, living with his wife. His wife had a chronic illness and she needed like home health care, so she wasn't working. And then there was another lady, um, she she was widowed and she was on her own, so she took on the house on her own, and it was in her husband's name. And so there were some things we had to sort out before we could even help her with that because her husband's name was still on the house. And then you know they both you know, were put into loans that they really didn't even need to be put into. I mean, she didn't have too much longer on her loan, maybe like 5 or 6 years. He had like 2 years left before he was done. But to lower the payments, he stretched it out for four. But then it was like I forget the details of the loan, but all I know is like after like 6 to 8 months, there was like a massive balloon payment and he just couldn't
Mm-hmm.
afford it. So at the time, I think that the situation was so bad that Harrisburg was doing loan modifications itself, and we had to do what was called a HEMAP. Yeah, HEMAP application. I forget what that acronym stands for now. And to get their loans modified through the state, through the state. And so like it was crazy now that I think about it. You know what I mean? And so like I and then my own like sort of financial trauma, like we lost our house as a kid, you know what I mean, because
Mm-hmm.
my parents got divorced. And so like this is something I feel very, very passionate about, you know what I mean. And then also people of color, you know really have like more limited options, when it comes to accessing affordable housing options, you know what I mean. And so that
Right.
exacerbates housing insecurity and in our community. So on top of like discriminatory housing practices and policies, that have historically and persistently like contributed to like the racial disparities in home ownership and wealth accumulation. You know what I mean? Because that's the number one way that people, accumulate wealth is through home ownership in this country. You know what I mean? So that's why we started this Project Equity, um, to mitigate these foreclosures so that people can stay in the community and stay in their homes. You know what I mean. We're having some issues with reaching the folks that we want to reach, specifically like elderly folks, because they're not the ones like scanning the QR codes on the flyers and things like that. We're always
Right.
getting like the folks in the neighborhood. You know what I mean. So like
Yeah.
we're having a hard time getting the people that we need to get, but as we partner with more folks, we'll be able to get in front of the people that we really need, the most vulnerable folks that really need to get go through this workshop, because it's not only like the educational piece of it, but it's also like the hands-on, like okay, let's not, oh no, one of the biggest things that we do with people is sign them up for like homestead exemption. I'm like, you've owned this home for like 20 years and you have not signed up for homestead exemption. You're paying all this in taxes. You know what I mean? That's one of the big, people just don't
Mm-hmm.
know, people just don't know. And so we got to
Yeah.
educate them, you know?
Yeah. People. That's part. One of the biggest things in terms of finances. People don't know what they don't know. So it's like you tell them something, and it's like, wow. Like just. I mean, especially is it's been intentional, not for us black and brown folks to even know like some of the stuff that that's out there and that we try to educate people on.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely,
I,
absolutely.
I, I heard something a couple weeks ago at a conference I went to. I was like, I did not know that you could do this, and obviously now you, especially if anything taught us the last 4 years, you can't trust everything you hear in terms of like finances. People will say anything for anything, but it's interesting what how much information is really out there that people really don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And you know, I think about like, you know, finances and like the intersection of finances and social work. Like, I really think of it as like and I like to think of it a lot as in a public health through a public health lens. Um, honestly, I think financial stability is like one of the social determinants of health. You know what I mean? So like think
Hmm.
about like, you know, thinking in terms of like structural factors, you know, thinking about like access to like quality education or stable employment, affordable housing, you know, that directly impacts your, you know, your financial stability. So, you know, I think part of the
It affects
process of
everything.
being yeah, it affects, yeah, well, yeah, affects everything for sure. So, I mean, I think part of being like, so practicing in this space as a social worker is like advocating for like, you know, systemic changes and like that promote financial equity, you know, and I think that's essential. And but I primarily like to work with the people. And I'm like, listen, this is what we gotta do. Okay, this is what we gotta do to get you right in this situation, meet them where they are. This is how we get you right. And now this is how we get you to win. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
I love that journey from the, from the, started from the bottom, like Drake said, we start from there, then, it's beautiful to see. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
yeah, I like it. And I mean, I did that journey myself. I did that journey myself. I feel like we all have once we, especially having these now, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Where people could go to find more information about the project equity and where can people reach out to you?
So people can find out more about Project Equity. So I co-founded a soon to be nonprofit. We're getting that paperwork done, but it's called Dynamic Justice Collective. So the website is www.dynamicjusticecollective.org. You can check out Project Equity there. It's one of our projects. And then you can also check it out at the my consulting website, and that's Sacred Realm Consulting. And the URL for that is www.sacredrealms.org. And if you want to just connect with me, you can come to LinkedIn. I'm under my name, Ken Peoples. And yeah, connect with me, reach out, and yeah, happy to connect and discuss and chat with anybody. So yeah, and network.
Uh, awesome. I won't bore the people, but we need to have a intervention about you being a Eagles fan. We need to change. Need to do some CBT to change that.
Oh no. And look, Bash, you didn't even tell me what you're a fan of who, not the Giants, are you?
I'm a Giants fan.
Oh, okay, okay. So 28-3. That's I understand where that's coming from. It's okay. It's all love, buddy.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Of course, Bass. It's nice being on and appreciate it. And yeah, talk soon.